Hello, everybody. It's Randy Selzer here. Welcome back to my YouTube channel and welcome back to the podcast. Today, we have a very special guest. Jarvis is joining us today. He is a well-known social media expert and a well-known social media influencer in the United States. He is the owner and creative director at Jarvis Media Consolidated. They're based in Syracuse in upstate New York. And Cole has a long background in social media, so we're going to have some fun today. He's held senior positions with Meta, where he worked with Facebook, and he has worked with TikTok. You're the first guy, Cole, that I've ever met who worked for TikTok, and also iHeartMedia. And he has experience also in the real estate sector because he was social media manager with Coldwell Banker at their offices in Los Angeles. So welcome, Cole. Nice to have you on board today, man.
Thanks, Randy. Really appreciate it. What a grandiose intro. I don't know if I live up to that, but I'll try.
Oh, I'm sure you will. I'm sure you will. So today we're going to talk a little bit about social media on my YouTube channel and my podcast. We do a lot of discussions that are based towards the general public, just about the real estate market, how to buy a house, how to sell a house, this kind of stuff, where the market is headed. But we've also done some other ones that could be directed towards people who are in business, specifically real estate agents or realtors, or anybody who has their own business who has looked at social media and said, oh my God, where do we start? What do we do? How do we make this thing work? And I think a lot of people, myself included, just kind of stumbled into it where, well, I better be on Twitter, or I better have a Facebook page and that kind of stuff, but without really a plan. I think the vast majority of people, small businesses and some large businesses, really don't know exactly what they're doing. They just kind of, I said to you the other day when we were talking, I'm the guy in the coal mine with a lit match trying to figure out my way through the social media landscape. But so today, Cole, we're going to ask you a whole lot of questions. Something tells me that we're not going to run out of stuff to talk about because this is a pretty big deal. And I know we're going to talk about building a brand as one of the things, but I know when I meet anybody, or if I'm going to go to, let's say, a new restaurant, and what's the first thing you do? You check them out online. You want to check out their reviews. You want to check, especially for a company, you want to check out, are they active on social media? Do they have a website? All stuff like that. And so that's where we're headed today. I hope the listeners are going to enjoy this. I know they will. I know they will. And for any realtors listening in, you better listen closely because we're going to get a wealth of information today. So I tend to ramble on a lot. You're going to find out. I do ramble
Wait,
on a lot.
wait, I might have you matched, man. I'll talk all day. It'll be this podcast will
Beautiful.
be 3 hours long. Yeah.
That's all right with me, man. We can go as long as you want, honest to God. So we're going to talk maybe a little bit first about what should goals be if you're a realtor specifically. What should your goals be when you're using social media? And I'm sure some people don't even have a goal. Oh, let's just post this because it's really cool or whatever.
Right.
But if you were, and I know you do a lot of consulting for companies and for individuals, let's start off with that one. Someone comes to you, they call you up and they say, Cole, I'm not sure what to do with this. I see a lot of my friends are on Instagram or on Facebook or whatever. What should that person put in place first as a series of goals so that they can implement and perhaps meet those goals? What would you tell them?
Yeah. So, and I think that it's really important that, of course, you have the goals of your business lined up first,
Right.
because I think what happens a lot of time in the social media world is that
Yeah.
we see people who are doing different things on social media that are very different business plans and very different businesses and industries, and we want to replicate them. But in reality, it's, for most folks, because my company works primarily with real estate agents. Um, the strategies that will work for a real estate agent in like a medium-sized market is very different from what, some massive brands like, Kylie Jenner or Dwayne The Rock Johnson are running. And
Right.
so it's important to know your goals. And so what I see a lot of times is that, really kind of two different phases of businesses. Folks who are real estate agents who are maybe either just getting started or they have been working for a while, but their goal is just that, hey, I just want to make a good living. I just want to, like my job, and I want to use social media as a tool to help me get some business, to get some leads, which is, I think, is the vast majority of folks.
Mm.
That strategy really comes down to, and we'll dive into, of course, all the specifics, posting, checking your results, knowing how to do that, of course,
Right,
and
right,
then continually improving. I think the problem is that we oftentimes think, oh, I'm just going to find that one viral post and then suddenly my
mm,
whole business will get solved.
right,
There's so many misconceptions about that. One, even if you do go viral once, it doesn't mean that you're going to get a lot of business from it. Doesn't mean you'll go viral again.
right.
So that's oftentimes like the wrong way to think about it. And then, of course, that differs greatly from somebody who's trying to build a brand. Let's say somebody who maybe is a broker who wants to build a team behind them, and they're
Right.
looking at it like instead of like I need a business this month, it's more so I want to build a really strong brand and business in the next 20 years or so.
Yes.
Um, that strategy is going to be slightly different, but really the big takeaway and what we do with a lot of the real estate agents we work with, or a lot of the people just that we consult with, and we're just telling them, hey, here's where to start. You just got to start going, get away from the analysis paralysis a lot of people are
Mm,
plagued with social media. um
gotcha.
just know how to check what's working, and we'll talk about those key metrics and whatnot, and
Right.
then just constantly make improvements. It gets really tough to be bad after you've done something so many times.
Trust me, I'll find a way. I'll find a way,
Yeah.
no matter. But it's a valid point. All those points are very valid. And so, if a new agent comes to you, let's say someone who's brand new to the business, they just got their license. Maybe they've dabbled around a little bit on Instagram or something with their friends, or maybe with Facebook or whatever. What would be, and I'm not asking you to give out the whole game plan here, but what would be some of the first couple of key things that we're talking about a new agent first? What should they
Yeah.
do initially to get the ball rolling in terms of social media?
Yeah, I think that's definitely the toughest one, because you're not only are you new on your marketing platform on social media, but you're
Right,
also just new to the real estate business, which is a
right.
tough business to be new to.
These days,
And
that's for
so,
sure. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, and so, what I like to say is, don't beat yourself up too much. I really
Mm,
think that people try to be perfect from the get-go, and you're really never going to be. And in pretty much everything you do in life, but definitely in social media. Um, and you can just look at all the people who create content for a living. Look at their like first post. It's one of my favorite things to do. It's almost always a train wreck. It's terrible. And I love that they keep them up, because it's a great lesson to folks that when
yeah.
you start out, you inherently don't know what you're doing. So of course it's going to not be the perfect thing. But you need to just start posting,
Right.
because until you start doing it a lot, until you get those repetitions, you won't get better. And also, you won't even know what to improve until you see it, one, from a third party perspective, but
Right.
also once you see how your audience reacts. I mean, if you're in, Ann Arbor, Michigan, and you're making a bunch of content that maybe some real estate agent in, Toronto is
Right.
doing and having success with, your market might not respond to that the same way. So you need to test it and just be shameless about putting out content, seeing how it works, and just try to get 1% better. If you do that over a long enough time, you're going to see some great results.
We're going to talk about that definitely, because one of the biggest issues I've run into, and I've been in the industry, I'm not going to say how many years, because I don't want it, people say, oh, it's that Jurassic Park guy. But the biggest problem I have is consistency. We're going to get to that later
Yeah.
about how, because what happens in real estate, you're running a business, and you're not an employee, you're running a business. And when you get busy, this is what's happened to me, is everything else goes by the wayside because you're out selling houses. And then you realize, oh my God, I haven't posted anything for 3 weeks or for a month
Yeah.
or two. And that is really, I think, what I've learned is the cardinal sin in social media, because people expect you to be there all the time. They want you to be there if they like you and they want to watch your channel. And also, I think, and we can also talk a little bit later about the algorithm everybody speaks of, which you have firsthand knowledge of, I know. So that if you're not posting regularly, for example, on Instagram, you can get kind of demoted. I think this is my impression. I may be wrong in that, but we'll get to that a little bit later. So, let's switch it up a little bit then. So let's say an experienced realtor comes to you. They've been in the business 15 years and they've been doing some stuff, but it's just kind of amateurish where they get a listing, they post it on Facebook, just listed, just sold, that kind of stuff. We've all seen it. Oh, I won an award. Here's my award for this year, that kind of stuff.
Right.
I've always felt that evergreen content was more important than just boasting about a new listing. We can all do that, and it's great. It's great to see, oh, so and so is busy. They got a new listing here, they got a new listing there, and just sold. Happy clients. Maybe they have a picture of their smiling clients because you sold their house and everybody's happy. But is that one way to go, or is it something to avoid? I've always felt that something evergreen is a little more important, or perhaps a little more newsworthy. But hey, there's agents out there, that's all they post, just their listings. That's it. Just list it. $1.1 million, blah, 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 whatever, beautiful swimming pool, this kind of stuff. But that's kind of here today and gone tomorrow, in my view. I might be off base on that. Cool. I'm not sure. What would you say?
Yeah. So I would say there's even two things there. There's evergreen or timely. So, short term content that's only relative now. Another
Right.
example of that is like, here are the housing rates right now, or here are the interest rates right now.
Right.
Another example of very specific time content. But then there's also promotional, or what I would kind of, write in as basically promotional or value driven content. Because you
Okay.
brought up example that I think every real estate agent, at least that I've talked to, does this. Where the vast majority of their content is just listed, or here's a review, right? And we think, okay, great, like this content is and those are two examples. You have the review is evergreen, and then the just
True.
listed is timely, and it's also still promotional. I think the mindset, so I'm gonna focus on those ones first, and I'll talk about the evergreen in just a second.
Okay.
But the mindset there, here's a great review. I'm going to put it out into the platform because it's going to show folks why they should trust me, which is a
Right.
fair sentiment. And then there's also the new listing, which has two purposes. One is that you're promoting it for, your
Your
client.
client.
So that's
Right.
great. Yeah, exactly. And then the other one is, well, this is also showing me that I'm working, that I'm active, and all that stuff, that I'm having success.
Right.
The problem with that is that people are not going to social media to look at reviews. And they're not going to social media to find your business specifically and figure out more about it. Social media works, especially how businesses use it, is a disruptive mechanism. So when we're posting social media content, it's usually your friends and family. That's the real reason that you're on platforms. Now, TikTok kind of disrupted that a little bit, and I'll talk about that in a second. But you're kind of being a disruptive entity, being like, I'm a business and I'm putting out content now that's going to interrupt your feed. So the way you have to think about it is your audience is actually, we think that like, oh, I'm putting out valuable content. Like this is free value. People should
Mm.
love it. The thing though is it's not free. People have to pay attention. And I love that phrase, is paying attention, because they're paying with their time, which is actually someone's most valuable resource, because you'll never get more time. So
I
when
think
we're
he
putting
just
out,
I think he
yeah.
just blew my mind. That's an old expression, but I never thought of it that way. You're right.
Yeah, and
It,
I think it's a great way to think about it,
yeah.
because it shows how important it is for your content to be highly valuable, to not only stand out and get people to stop scrolling, but also to actually impart some sort of value so that they'll have a positive
Mm.
interaction with your brand that will stack over time. So that just all goes to say that the promotional content usually hurts folks more than it helps folks. There's a time
Interesting.
and a place for reviews and all that great stuff. I think that's
Mhm.
important in like your marketing funnel to some degree.
Right.
But on social media, which tends to be the very top of the funnel, right? That's where the people first come in, they first become familiarized.
Right.
That's really where your goal should just be, if I'm going to stop your scroll, I need you to walk away from this being, wow, that is definitely going to benefit me. And if it doesn't benefit
Mm.
them, then it won't get on their feed anyway.
They're gone.
So,
Yeah.
exactly. So
Yeah.
that's where you need to really focus on, not as much the how we normally think about it, and all businesses do this, by the way, which is, how do I take my brand and I push it to people, but instead say, no, how can I talk about something that's really valuable to folks and draw them in? That mindset shift tends to be a better way to think about content when we're using social media, how most real estate agents do it.
That's profound, man. I remember reading somewhere that in on social media, and again, I'm a rank amateur here, that there was two things you can do. You can entertain people or you can educate people. There's those two things.
Right.
And I think I know I'm not a great entertainer. You know, I'm not going to get up and dance a dance or sing a song or something. That's not going to happen. But you can educate people, and there's important things
Yeah.
that they need to know. And real estate is such a vast industry that there are, and it's a changing industry all the time. That I
Right.
think that's really great what you just said. You got to interrupt that scroll. That's the key. And if you're just saying, well, you know, just sold in 3 days, that's fine, I guess. But I've always stayed away from it. Plus, I'm up against some big players here, where there's a guy in my marketplace who has 60 people working for him, 60. And how are you going to
Yep.
compete with that? You say, well, I got a new listing. Well, he just got 10. You know, it's not,
Right.
you don't want to get into that because there's always somebody who's going to outrank you for that. So, really interesting stuff.
Yeah,
Um,
and I think you also too like and I'll tie into the evergreen too because I want to answer your question there. When it comes to the evergreen or the timely, I think there's a place for both of those.
hmm,
Because I do think as real estate agents, it is, the job is to help to inform and guide someone through. When I was working at Coldwell Banker, they had a great marketing initiative where they talked about you're basically a Sherpa. You're guiding someone through the treacherous journey of buying or selling a
okay.
home. And
Okay.
that's kind of what you're being paid for. You're being paid to help someone guide them through that journey rather.
Right
And
on.
so information is really important. So the timely stuff I think is really relevant. But the evergreen, especially on certain platforms, YouTube being probably one of the bigger ones where uh
Yes,
like content can live there forever if it's good.
that's right.
So I think it's important to have both aspects in there, but also really like if we're talking actually tactically level, if you're having trouble creating content,
Hmm,
whatever is valuable to your audience, which is most of us, whatever is valuable to your audience that you like to talk about and that you can talk about, that is always going to give you more outsized returns. It's really tough to talk about things that you're not as familiar with or that you just don't enjoy as much. So if your thing is interest rates and you can make 20 videos a week doing interest rates, do that because that's where you're going to have the most growth. Or even five, whereas like if you have to make this like big old evergreen content thing and it takes all this preparation and that's going
right.
to only net you one video or one post, do the one that you can get more volume because you can learn faster and grow ultimately quicker.
Interesting. Okay, you touched upon something when you mentioned YouTube there. There are lots of different platforms. And I think you said, well, you want to post stuff that's valuable to your audience. Uh, One of the most interesting things that I came across was that each platform has a different audience, I believe. You know, Facebook is a lot of older people. It's true. A lot of older people, most of the people 50 plus tend to be on Facebook. Instagram's a little bit younger generation. You got to TikTok, where it's a lot of young kids. And I had
Right.
someone who was helping me a couple of years ago who was saying, oh, you got to be on TikTok. You got to be on TikTok. And I mentioned this when we were talking on the phone the other day. And he said, just do it. Just do it. I said, well, it's a bunch of kids. It's a bunch of teenagers on TikTok. And
Hmm.
we did a couple of test posts and they blew up. I got like 3,000 views. But I'm going to him, who are these people watching this? They're 15 years old, right? And he says, yeah, well, they'll be old enough to buy a house in another 10, 15 years. Well, that's a little bit too long of a time frame for me.
Sure.
But
Yeah.
but now, 2 years later, I'm seeing some of these big players, not just some of them, but quite a few of them are posting on TikTok. They're posting videos of everything. So there are different platforms, and I know they've all got, and you know this better than anybody, that Instagram is different than Facebook, and Twitter is different than, and LinkedIn is now social media in many ways, and of
Yeah.
course YouTube. Where if you're trying to determine who is your target audience, let's say the average realtor, I would think, is a little younger than me, but let's say their target audience is from 25 to 50. That's a pretty big spread. But that's your
Yeah.
primary target audience for home buyers or home sellers, by and large. Why would anybody, and these are some very smart people, some very prominent people that I know, why would somebody like that, with a team of 60 people working for them, be posting real estate videos on TikTok? Is there a benefit to that, or are they just crazy?
Yeah, there's definitely a benefit. I do think that people people do get caught up in trendy things,
Yeah,
and
true.
TikTok definitely does this. I can't tell
TikTok.
you how often I talk to folks, real estate agents who, are really, really questioning just about TikTok. And it's
Yeah.
very funny because I oftentimes, and I feel like I could be kind of unbiased about it because they'll say TikTok, and I'm like, but are you missing an opportunity on Facebook? And there's a lot that goes into it.
Mm.
Number one, I think that it's important to look at the numbers as they actually lie. Don't just do TikTok because it's super, super trendy. That being said, TikTok gets all this publicity because it's the fastest growing platform. But
Yes.
there's also kind of a double-edged sword to that. It's the fastest growing platform because it's not nearly as big yet. So
Ah,
it's got
interesting.
about in the US specifically, it's got about 70 to 80 million monthly active users. I did a video on this not
Wow.
too long ago, so those numbers should be pretty close. Facebook has about 300 million monthly active users in the US alone.
Wow.
So, yes, TikTok is growing fast, and I make this joke in my video, but it's like, yeah, Facebook's growing much slower than TikTok because you're just running out of people. Like at a certain point, you can't keep growing because there's not enough people. Um,
Yeah.
so yeah, like there's a lot of growth in there, and there's a lot of opportunity to go viral potentially on a platform like TikTok where there's less competitors in there.
Mhm.
But you do have to think about your demographic, and that's where it comes back down to your goals there. Are you thinking about growing a brand that you want to be really strong in 10 to 20 years? In which case, I would totally focus a lot on TikTok. Or are you saying, okay, I need to see some, progress right now? Then I would focus on the more traditional institutional
Mm.
platforms like YouTube, Facebook, and LinkedIn, Instagram. Now there's
That's
also
interesting. So
yeah,
you're
there's
saying you're
all
saying that the TikTok could be a long-term play where you catch these
yes.
people when they're 18 years old or 15 years old, but they stick with you because they like your content. And 10 or 15 years from now, when they're ready to buy something or whatever, do something in real estate, you've established that brand awareness with them. That's an interesting
Yeah,
point.
and as a complete side note, I saw this not too long ago, but if you look at Ryan Serhant's
Yeah.
strategy on his marketing strategy as a whole, he does and he says this often. He does interviews with like CNBC and like big news outlets, right? And that's generally how he gets in front of the more traditional like male archetype.
Right.
Then
Right.
he also does some more content on other different like platforms, and interviews folks who that fall more under like the female archetype. I can't remember what exactly platforms he attributes to that, but then he does a lot of social stuff that's a lot more fun and lighthearted on platforms like TikTok and others, and that appeals to the kids. And the idea there is that at the dinner
Oh
table,
man.
you're appealing to every single person at the dinner table. So when it's brought up, everyone has a connection point to that brand, which I think is super smart. That being said, we're looking at someone who has in relation almost unlimited resources to the average real estate agent.
I was just going to say, because you could spend so much time on this, and the public doesn't realize. If you're posting, especially on multiple platforms, you got to have, and you can, well, we could talk about, you can buy these automated programs, which will automatically post for you once or twice a week. I don't know if that's a good idea. I've never done it.
I'm so happy you brought this up. Yes.
Okay. To
Yeah.
me, it's like a wagon that's out of control, or I like to be able to know exactly when things are going out. But I'm the first one to admit, especially in the industry that I'm in, when you get busy, unfortunately, a lot of that posting goes by the wayside. Unless you have a team, or you have a dedicated social media manager, or you've got a spouse or somebody, a partner who can help you with social media. But it's really tough to be consistent. That's the number one thing that I have struggled with in my career.
Yeah, it's very tough to be consistent. And I could probably make I could probably make content forever just on the topic of uh denouncing the auto posting platforms.
Oh boy, here we
And
go. Okay,
and
cool.
yeah,
Tell me, how do you think about the auto posting? How does that work?
they're great. Everyone should do it. No, just kidding. The reason I say that is because it at a certain time a while ago, it may have made sense to do this. Before, it was
Mm,
much harder for a business to compete on a platform, on social media platforms. But the problem with this is kind of twofold. And I'll give you kind of an analogy. Let's say you're thinking about going to see a movie, right? That just came out, is in theaters. And your friend, who you tend to like a lot of the same interests with, they say, oh, hey, you know what? Don't see that movie. It was terrible. I hated it. Worst money I've ever spent.
Mm.
What is your likelihood of going to see that movie?
Not
It's
so likely. Right.
exactly, it's way lower.
Yep.
Now, that's generally how we view brands, right? Essentially, if you get an idea that you're not going to like someone's content, whether
Yep.
that's from a recommendation or that's from,
Yep.
previous content that you've seen, you're less likely to consume that content. And
True.
so that's just how like a lot of business branding works. And so not only psychologically, if you're putting out content that's kind of bland that doesn't actually really resonate with folks,
Hmm.
um, not only is that going to deter people, just not even consciously, but subconsciously, they're just not going to connect with it.
Yeah. They won't come
The
back.
platforms, yeah, but more importantly, the platforms know this. So the platforms know that when you stop interacting with content, you're not interested in seeing it. And keep in mind
Mm.
that every single time a piece of content is placed on your feed, the platforms are taking a risk. They don't know if you're going to love it or hate it. They can only make educated guesses based off of immense amounts of data. And
Right.
so their entire business model is about keeping you on the platform longer. The longer you stay on Instagram, the more ads you see, the more money they make. That's the whole business model in a nutshell. So they'll never risk sending you content that they think you're going to be uninterested in. They're only going to show you
Mm.
content that you are interested in based off of data that they have about you and your consumer habits.
Interesting.
So if you are putting out auto posting platforms, the logic behind there is usually I'm not posting enough, but I want to just still be, I want to have something there. I want to just have some kind of presence.
Right.
The problem with that is not only will it not get you grow your audience, it will actually give you a bad track record. It will hurt you. And so when you
Ah.
do create a video, that's great. You put a lot of time and effort into it. You're working with a bad history. And that's where it comes in the analogy of your friend giving you a bad recommendation about going see a movie. You have this bad track record. So the platform knows, well, we're not going to recommend content to a huge, massive audience because they have such a bad track record of content before. And that's where it takes a lot of time to rebuild that. So, in a huge, long winded nutshell, that is where I recommend folks that I would rather you not post at all for a month than have an auto posting platform that's just posting a bunch of stuff that every
That's
other
so
agency.
interesting. That's
Yeah.
so interesting. And I know there's a couple of companies here locally where I am that they're prolific. Like a lot of agents subscribe to them, but you could tell instantly that it's kind of canned information and it's generic and there's no likes, there's nothing, there's no interaction at all. But you could tell.
Yeah.
Interesting. Anyways, all right. Well, that's something to think about. So stay away from the generic auto posting. I think absolutely, I'll agree with you on that one, 100%. Um, okay, so we talk about, okay, so we're posting content, we're trying to build a brand. I get you. I get you what you're saying there, especially for agents who are in it for the long haul. They're not going to do this
Right.
for 1 or 2 years. They want to be here for 10 or 15 or 20 years. So you're building a brand. Actually, it took me a while to figure this out. When I first started in the industry, I was with Century 21 for a few years. And I don't know. I bought into that. Okay, we're promoting Century 21. No, you're not. You're supposed to be promoting yourself because one day you move to Remax. And then eventually I'm with a company now called Sutton Group, which is a Canadian franchise. Same idea. Coldwell Banker, any one of them. And but you really should be promoting yourself, not that company. You're the individual. You're the one who establishes a relationship with your clients, not the broker, not the overall company that's across the country.
Right.
So building a brand. I mean, we say, okay, we're going to build a brand. There's so many things you can do. I mean, I've known guys who are old school. That there's one in particular I knew in a neighborhood in a place called Oakville, which is outside of Toronto. And he owned this neighborhood. He owned it, and he used to do a barbecue every summer in the park. He'd spend thousands of
Hmm.
dollars because all these people from the whole neighborhood would come to his annual barbecue. And you know
Hmm.
what? That guy was really hard to compete against. I moved away. I
Hmm.
couldn't compete with him. I couldn't do barbecues. But he was building a brand. That was part of it. And this is sort of in the early days of social media. This goes back a while. But that was old school stuff that worked. So he'd have a barbecue. People would come. They all knew him by his first name. And he was the first guy they thought of. And this was a neighborhood of executive homes. So they were all high end homes. And I thought, how does he do that? Well, he thought of it and he did it. Now, today, most of us are not going to go out and do a barbecue for the entire neighborhood for 600 homes, but there's stuff that we can do. There's stuff that we can do, and but I think the biggest thing that's missing, I know in my world, and also most of the realtors I talk to, is just having a plan. Just having a guided plan where you're trying to figure out, well, we know where we are, we know where we'd like to get to, and what are the steps that we have to take
Mhm.
in order to get there. So you touched a little bit upon the different platforms. I love YouTube. I do. I really like doing these videos. I actually do. It's fun for me. It's fun.
Yeah.
But there's other platforms. I'm a little frustrated sometimes with Instagram. I don't always understand it. And they don't allow links back to the website, which is a problem for me. Well, there's a way to do it, but that's one thing. And of course, TikTok, which my friend or associate got me to try, and it actually I had tremendous views on it. No
Mhm.
comments, but there it just you could tell somebody was watching it, and we did
Yeah.
that as a test, and that's like 3 or 4 years ago. But I never followed up on that because I am closed-minded and I don't think open-minded. I thought, well, there's kids, just watching
Mm.
this for these short reels. So interesting. So which ones would you focus on? Would you say that there's quite a wide variety of platforms that are out there? If you were
Yeah.
talking to a realtor, let's say it's a realtor who is established, they've been in the industry 10 years, they dabble around, they're on Facebook, they're on Instagram, whatever. What would you tell them? And they're relatively successful. Let's say they're making enough deals, they're not starving, they're doing okay. What would you tell them to do if they came to you and said, I don't know, tell me what I should do next? Should they
Mm.
expand what they're working on now? Should they try to encompass all the platforms? What's the best strategy for an agent like that who's maybe been in the industry 10 years, let's say?
Yeah, I think TikTok actually did us all a huge favor when it comes to managing all these social media platforms because they came out with short form video content, which by the way was they're not the first to do that. Vine was before them, and then Vine I believe was just mismanaged, very popular among especially millennials. And then kind of went under. TikTok kind of came in and took over that short form, really short at the time, really short. When I was working with them, they didn't have these long options to make longer content. It was like, I think you had like maybe 45 or it was 60 seconds, like max. That's all you ever had. That was the only option.
Yep.
But what they did was they exploded with this in terms of popularity and they forced the other platforms to compete. So now on these platforms, you have all the major platforms, you have the ability to make the same kind of content, which is vertical short form content. Facebook and Instagram, you have Reels. YouTube,
Yep.
you have Shorts. TikTok, or TikTok, you have TikToks, and then YouTube, or sorry, LinkedIn,
Yeah.
you have just normal videos. You just have them. So, what I always recommend to folks, especially if they're like, hey, like there's not a certain platform that I really love, right? I just know I want to be on social media. I want to build my brand. I want to get a lot of viewership that will help my brand. And I want to
Right.
talk, don't let me forget, I want to talk about what's called a shadow funnel and the benefits to that, even if you're not sending folks like deliberately to like a website in campaigns. But I'll put that
Okay.
aside for a second to
Okay.
stay on topic. Um, and so when you can make the same kind of content on all the platforms, it
Hmm.
makes the solution a lot easier. Because unless there's a platform that you absolutely love and that you know it really well, and like that's going to make it easier for you to make content, in that case, I would do that, whether that's Instagram, TikTok, whatever the platform is. If you're like most folks and you're like, I'm just trying to make content to grow my brand, you just make short form video content. It is deployable on all of the platforms. And instead of trying to prioritize what platform should I be on, instead focus on what is the message that will resonate with the audience. Put it on all the platforms. And that way you
Okay.
kind of mitigate the risk of not being on a platform where your potential audience is.
Interesting. Interesting. So I was always just posting photos until fairly recently. Okay. So if I was posting on Instagram, it was typically photos, occasionally a carousel, but usually just static photos.
Hmm.
And then I realized that what most people are watching on Instagram or anywhere are videos, especially short form videos. So would you recommend to somebody that says, well, I'm nervous about being on camera. I don't ramble on like you do, Randy. I don't like talking in a microphone, this kind of stuff. What would you tell them? Just find a way, be brave, just do it. Or is there still a place for photos? Because I've noticed the same thing. And when you do a video, there's way more interaction. There just is way more interaction than even great photos. You go out and take some awesome
Hmm.
photos. You might get a few likes, but usually one or two comments. It's nothing great. Mind you, what do I know? But what would you say to people? Should they focus on videos over photos?
Yeah, I mean, video is more, a lot of these platforms, they automatically play the video when,
Yep.
as soon as you scroll past it. there's an
Yep.
inherent benefit just to that. But
Right.
we people connect with videos, they engage with videos more often. As a
Mm.
great side note, I was my son's 5 months old. The TV's on in the room. He's staring at it. He doesn't know what's happening on it, but it's capturing his attention even at such a young age because moving pictures have that effect on us as people. So there's that benefit just from a purely psychological and marketing standpoint. But then also, I think exclusively in, or not exclusively, but especially in real estate, you know, for agents, your business is your brand, and your brand is your face.
Yeah.
So you need to be showcasing, your face and your personality, because again, just like how
So true.
the analogy of being a Sherpa, guiding your client through this oftentimes arduous process. They need to know that they're going to have somebody who they like, who they appreciate, who, of course, they think is going to be skilled enough. And the fastest
Yep.
way to distribute that kind of knowledge about how strong your brand is, how good at your job you can be, and how you can help somebody is
Mm.
through video content. Now, when it comes to making that content, it is tougher for some people than most, not because of any inherent advantages or disadvantages. It's just purely because some people like some stuff. But I would argue that's the same thing for almost everything. Some people like sales, some people like cold calling. I haven't met any of them, but some people do.
I used to do that.
But some people really
Mm.
enjoy that stuff. And so, of course,
Yeah.
there's an advantage there. Now, I think the trick is that, you tend to like what you're good at, and it's hard to do something a ton of times and not develop a skill set in it, or not develop some
Right.
sort of comfortability with it. And so I always recommend to people to batch create content. This is not a novel concept, but
Well,
just,
okay. Okay.
yeah,
Batch content creating. This is
yeah.
something I've read about many times, and I find it hard enough to do one video, right? One video, it takes a lot of preparation. The public doesn't understand how much work
Oh,
goes
yeah.
into it. Some videos require a lot of editing. This one probably won't require hardly any editing because it flows pretty good. But with some people, you know this, there's awkward moments where people get tongue tied or whatever, and you spend a lot of time on editing and getting it ready for publication.
Mhm.
Um, Batch, like I've seen that. Oh, just record 5 videos in one morning. Really? I've never tried to do that, but maybe that's something I should try because then you've got 5 weeks worth of content that you can put out there without. But then there's another thing. All these social media platforms, they are, what's the right word? They're voracious. They want
Mhm.
more and more and more. If you publish one video a week, they want two. If you publish two a week, they want daily. It's whether it's YouTube or Instagram, doesn't matter. They all want more because, like what you said earlier, is they want you to stay on their platform. That's number one. The more time that's spent on there, YouTube's going to make ad revenue. Instagram's going to make, Facebook's going to make ad revenue. That's what it's all about at the end of the day.
Right.
But I just wish I tried it kinda to do batch
Yeah.
recording, and man, my brain was going to explode. Like I couldn't do it. I tried.
I will say, I think it's a great point. I will say it's far easier to batch create short form content.
Okay, all
Yeah.
right.
I mean,
I'll
I
back
do
up a
agree with
bit.
you.
These
Yeah,
were
if
not
you're making
short
like a
form.
yeah, if
Yeah,
you're making like a 30-minute YouTube video, it's really
yeah,
tough to block
do
out
five
five
in a row.
hours.
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So I totally agree with you there. Uh, for short form content, we tend to, find that that's easier, especially because the first video, especially for folks who have difficulty with this, the
Hmm.
first video is the one where you're really second guessing yourself the most, right? And this is what my company does, is like we
Yeah.
actually jump on a recording with people remote. We have a couple different things that we do, but one of the main package that we end up doing is that we record content with people like on a call like this,
Hmm.
and we guide them through the process to make it easier. And let me tell you, like, we'll do like 12 videos in an hour, and so 1 hour we get a month's worth of content oftentimes. And so that is, of course, a huge time savings. But the reason that we do it like that is because the first two, with some folks who really struggle with it, they're really in their head. They're going to retake
Yeah.
things a million times. By
Right.
the 10th video, they're flying. They're pros. Like, it doesn't matter where they start. By the time
Man,
you do something 10
I
times
wish
in a
I'd met you
row,
12 years ago. Let me tell you. You're so right, though. And the other thing I would say, again, with my limited experience, is that Rome wasn't built in a day. And it takes a
yeah.
while to get up to speed in terms of gear. Like every year I would buy myself 1 year a microphone, 1 year, some lighting, stuff like that. You don't necessarily have to do it perfection from day one. But I'm sure
Right.
guys like you, and by the way, I'm going to put all your contact information underneath the video and in the podcast for sure. And I urge anyone listening to this today or watching this today to reach out to Cole because I know they'll be in good hands. I can feel it. I just know it. They're not going to regret
Appreciate
calling you
that.
for sure. Um, so yes, that's valuable because I can tell you from my experience when you're trying to invent the wheel the first time around and you're just winging it, it's harder. It is. And you
Yeah.
like you said, you look back at the original videos and oh my God, what was that? Oh, it's out of focus. Oh, the sound is no good. You know, all this
Yeah.
kind of stuff, stumbling around, and you do get a little bit better at it. But my
It's
biggest problem is consistency because again, realtors, and it's a seasonal business we're in. Whether you're in upstate New
yeah.
York or here in Canada, in the wintertime, December, January, February, it slows right down. Every year it's the same because people don't want to go out when there's a blizzard. You know, they don't want
Yeah.
to go house hunting, but it's a spring, summer, and early fall market. So again, you might have time in the wintertime where you're not that busy with clients,
Right.
where you could do a whole bunch of stuff. But in the summertime, man, when you got two, three appointments a day and you're running and you're doing offers, getting home at 10 o'clock at night or whatever, now it's a little easier with e-signatures and all the technology we have. But
Right.
that's the biggest problem is I guess it's a discipline issue. Maybe I need to work on that.
I don't
More
think it's as
discipline.
much. I don't think it's as much. I mean, of course, discipline always helps, but I think it's also that we get a really social media is such an interesting construct
It
because we
is.
get such a skewed perspective of what's really happening. If you had a like let's say I could promise you, hey, whenever you want, you can go into a small theater and you can address 100 potential home buyers or sellers in, in your market whenever you want about whatever
Wow.
topic, and you can do that
Wow.
whenever you want. That would feel so immensely valuable. And yet, when we get 100 views on an Instagram video, we think, wow, this thing really didn't perform. And in reality, it's a very skewed perspective because we hear all these stories of people who are getting millions and billions of views. And we think, wow, if I'm getting 100, that's
Well,
terrible. But that's also where the perspective comes in of, well, what is the goal here? Because if the goal is to
yeah.
be an entertainer, which sometimes I think a lot of real estate agents really just want to be entertainers,
Some do.
not the majority,
The
but
the
some
ta- the
like
Taylor Swift of real estate. There you go.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Which hey, to each his own. That's totally fine. But the
Yeah.
folks who, if you're making content just to get more and more views and try to grow that way
Right.
without testing against other more qualitative metrics, you're really being more of an entertainer. You're really more of a content creator. Again, nothing wrong with that. It's just a different business.
Mm.
If your goal is, well, I want to make content that's going to leverage my brand and help my funnel, whether it's my actual funnel or my shadow funnel, I brought it back. And if that's your goal there, then 100 people is actually kind of massive if you're able to do that like clockwork whenever you want. So that's
That's a
where
good point.
social media skews our perspective, and it becomes a
You're
lot
right.
easier to kind of do that when we know, okay, here's the actual real results. And would I rather spend 4 hours cold calling 100 people or, 60 seconds making a video?
Right. Right. All right. What is a shadow funnel? Okay,
Yeah,
you've got
okay.
everybody listening here. So what? A chat what is a shadow funnel?
Yeah, we dropped these nuggets in here. Perfect. It worked out much better than I expected. So the shadow funnel is really interesting because it
Okay.
really speaks to the power of brand. And social media is great. Other forms of marketing do this too, but social media has a great way of doing this where we think about a normal traditional funnel. Let's say, for instance, we do cold as an example, right? You cold email a bunch of people, right?
Right.
Let's say you cold email 100 people just to make these numbers easy. Let's say you get 10 responses, right? Those are like your kind of
That's pretty
pseudo
good.
interested. Yeah,
Right.
yeah, that'd be fine.
Yeah.
You get like 10 responses. That's your kind of more warm kind of
Right.
lead, right?
Right.
And then you get a couple people who are like, yeah, like let's talk. I'm interested. I'm thinking about buying or selling my house or, or whatever. That's a really hot lead, right? That's a
Yeah.
traditional funnel. You start with a lot of people, you trickle down. What a shadow funnel does is it works in parallel to a normal funnel. And all businesses have a funnel to some degree, whether you know
Okay.
it or not.
Okay.
And so the shadow funnel, what it is, it works in the background to legitimize your brand. And this is where it's
Hmm.
helpful to have content that A, shows your expertise, shows your personality, and makes people know, like, and trust you. even if you post a lot of content and you don't see a direct one-to-one of somebody saw my video, they went to my website, they became a lead, they bought or sold a house with me.
Right.
Even if that traditional funnel doesn't exist there, oftentimes people will still, when the difference between being a cold lead and a warm lead, they'll say, "Oh, interested, Karen in Toronto. Let me go check her out." And they'll see your Instagram or your Facebook or your YouTube.
Right.
They'll watch a lot of your videos. And then by the time they come down, they get you a call, you've actually don't even realize that you've built so much conviction in them because of the reputation that you've portrayed with your content.
I
And
get
so
you.
this shadow funnel works in the background, and sometimes it's very hard to track that, which is why it's called a shadow funnel, but it's immensely powerful and makes closing a lot easier for a lot of leads.
Interesting. I'm just digesting that, man. I do
It's
believe that
yeah.
works too, because I have had a couple of times where you think, well, I actually asked them, how did you reach me? Was it off the website? Oh no, it was off. I listened to a podcast of yours from 2 years ago. It's like, what?
Yeah.
What? I actually said to this lady, you made my day. I can't believe that. You're the person that listened to it. So, anyways, yes. So a shadow funnel. I like that word. I like that term.
And I
And
think
yes,
what's
it's in the
yeah.
background, but it's there.
Yeah, and what's really nice about that is because it also helps to legitimize your efforts. Because again,
Hmm.
it takes a while to build a lot of metrics that feel fantastic on social media. And a lot of times, for the average agent out there, the whole reason that I have a business is that the average agent out there, it's very tough to balance what feels like a totally effective social media schedule and doing all the other things that are
Yep.
necessary.
Right.
So in, a lot of the content I create, my whole thing is, well, let's be practical about it because if you're yes, you could theoretically post 50 times a day, but that's honestly not what the 99.9% of agents are going to be able to
Nobody
do.
can do that. No.
Right. So instead, we need to understand the value, which the shadow funnel is massive, but then also, of course, we have the ability to track and test, which is insane. We should even just talk about that for a second. But the shadow funnel helps to understand that even if you don't feel like you're getting a lot, what it does is it shows a a resume of content and knowledge that people can check out. And it's so funny because sometimes you need a more elaborate CRM to even notice when this stuff is happening. And I had a lead for my own business come through. They saw an ad, they responded. So that's my traditional funnel. And
Hmm.
then 2 minutes after they responded to my ad and they became a lead, I saw that they followed me on Instagram. I'm like, well, there's the shadow funnel at work. Like it's very funny how that happens, but sometimes we don't know that. And it's important to know that because you might be thinking you're far worse at social media than you actually are. And that's what
Hmm.
I oftentimes tell a lot of agents is that you're
Interesting.
probably doing better than you think.
So it's not a sprint, it's a marathon. It is. It's going to take
Yeah.
some time. That shadow funnel's in the background, but it's building up, and people are becoming more and more aware of you. Man, that's music to my ears, let me tell you. And people do watch and they do comment. I've had people say to me, "I know you from somewhere,"
Yeah.
and I never met them. I know I never met them. And then as maybe I have a podcast. Oh, maybe that they don't even remember where they saw you, but they remember your
Yeah.
name, they remember your face. So
Yeah.
interesting, interesting. So, all right. Well, you've given us major nuggets here, man. Holy mackerel. There's so much to do. I think it's a little bit overwhelming for many agents when they look around, especially with all the various platforms that, where do you start? Right. And not everybody's
Right.
comfortable on camera. I get that. I don't care. I mean, I'm too old to care, right? If I look weird, fine. I don't care. I wish I had more technical skills. I can tell you that much. Because that's another issue actually with video when realtors
Mm.
get involved because they're a little bit intimidated. Wow, I can work my phone, but what do you do with it after? And even then, for me too, getting used to editing videos, short videos on your phone as opposed to a desktop, like for Instagram, for example, that to me, it's still a learning curve. It's different. I prefer a bigger
Yeah.
screen. I prefer having a mouse, that kind of stuff. But
Well, that's yeah, and also too, just a couple of tactical bits of stuff that'll help folks. I know we chatted for a brief second about OBS, but for a couple
yes,
of tactical tools, and anybody who's interested, I mean, one, I recommend trying to actually get away from overproducing content because again, just for people who have trouble
interesting.
making it, folks who
Yeah.
like making it, like you and me, that's
Uh,
a whole different story. But if you're not interested as much, try and get away from editing because it's just another barrier to entry that will kind of get in the way of you posting. I can't tell you how many times that a thumbnail has stopped
hmm,
me or gotten me from posting something to posting it 2 weeks later, just because I hadn't had time to edit that. And so
interesting.
I think
Interesting.
that's important, but a couple great tools. If you're recording content on like a laptop, OBS is a free platform to use. It's not that hard to learn. You can really figure it out in like a 5 minute YouTube video. And
Okay.
then CapCut is a free editing platform that's
I've
really
heard of
great for
that.
short form vertical content. It's actually made by ByteDance, the same company that owns TikTok, funny
Oh,
enough.
okay. Okay. All
So
right.
what's great is that you can edit a piece of, you can record something on your phone, edit it right there if you even need to, and then post that directly to all your different platforms so that you can kind of make the process a little bit more streamlined. You don't have to edit
Interesting.
it on TikTok, edit it on Instagram and all of that stuff. You can save a lot of time.
What's the best way if you've recorded a horizontal video and you want to convert it to vertical? What's the simplest and best way to do that?
The simplest way to do that is to not move a lot in your video. Because
Okay.
then what you can do is you can just cut right down the middle. Because if I got my screen dimensions correct, right here would be kind of where the
Right.
where my video would get cut off. I want to make it vertical. So
Right.
if I make sure not to move too much, then I don't have to do all of this extra editing. But
Right.
you can use, I recommend CapCut, which you can also use on a desktop. I actually prefer it on the desktop, or you
Okay.
can use it on your app. And what's really cool is you can just toggle the different dimensions. So if you're recording 9 by 16 and you want to record 16 by 9,
Right.
horizontal or vertical, I always get the two mixed up.
Okay.
But you can easily toggle between it. And as long as you're not being too crazy and leaning out of your frames, it should make it an easy editing process for you. That's what I would do for the easiest way.
Okay. So OBS and CapCut are two definite programs that everybody should check out, and they're both free. CapCut is free as well. Amazing.
Yeah, there is a pro version, which is like
Okay.
$10 a month. I think it's totally worth it, but the
Okay.
free version is great.
All right. Okay. OBS and CapCut. All
Yeah.
right. Very interesting. So, what else you want to talk about?
Well, I mentioned something,
Yeah.
and I did forget what it is. I don't remember. We got the shadow funnel.
Yes.
But I think let me talk about really quickly if you're like an agent or really any business, two things. One, and I hope I stress this enough because we talked a lot about the pain points of social media, but I
Right.
do want to say that, like anything else, the more you do it, the easier it gets. It's the hardest part of the diet is starting, the first couple weeks, I should say. The hardest part of exercise is starting. Once you make it a
Yes.
habit, it becomes a lot easier. And that's what I would say first and foremost. It's the metrics. It's testing.
Oh,
Social media,
okay. Here we
that's how it
go.
came back up. Yeah.
All right.
So
Okay.
this is so massively important because 20, 30 years ago, you used to have to pay a marketing company hundreds of thousands of dollars for the
Right.
kind of data and insights that we now take for granted and get completely free with social media. So that's just a huge a side note. And most of us don't even check those analytics.
It's
But
true.
if you're on, and one of the easiest platforms to do it, I mean, all of these platforms have it. Usually, right in the app, you can go to either your
Right.
analytics or your insights, kind of the same thing,
Right on.
and just see what's reacting best. Now, some of the key things I would do, you can really dive into it. If you're a data nerd like me, you can spend all day in these platforms. One thing I would focus on is reach. Reach is the number of individuals your content is getting in front of. So if you have a reach of 100, that means that 100 different people saw your content.
Okay.
Impressions are just the number of times your content was seen.
Okay.
So that could be, so if you have 100 people you reached, that's 100. And then let's say you had 200 impressions, then maybe on average, each person saw your video twice.
Okay.
A lot of big takeaways you could take from that. But that helps you understand how your content is getting distributed automatically. So if your reach is increasing, what you're doing basically is you're showing people that your content is really fantastic and you're getting in front of more people and the platforms are pushing it out to more folks, which is a metric
I'm
that
making
you
notes.
should really think about.
I'm making
And
notes
so
there about the reach. Okay. Good to know.
now, so what's really important here, so without getting too crazy and trying to keep it more top line, because I know people have different levels of expertise here, is it's really important to have qualitative metrics with quantitative. All that means is that numbers versus the level of intention, the quality there. If you get 100,000 people to watch your video, but they're watching it just because you're talking about a pair of slacks that you like, That's
Okay.
not really helpful for a real estate agent. But if
Right.
you get 100 people to watch a video because they're interested in the knowledge that you bring to the table about buying or selling in your market, that's a very different story. So that's why I say with people, avoid trends like the plague, because trends can get you a lot of viewership. But best case scenario, let's say, what's a big trend that's been going on? I'm a little bit out of date with my TikTok platform. But when these big trends come and go, like it's a lot of times they're dance videos and stuff like that, right? You
Right.
may be tempted. A lot of people are like, I don't want to do dances. Don't worry, you don't have to. A lot of people are like, well, maybe I should try it out because I'll get in front of a lot of people. The question is, are those the right people you want to get in front of? And if so,
Yeah.
are you
That's a
getting in
valid
front of
point.
them? Yeah, are you getting in front of them with the right intentionality? Like, do you want people to know you as the person who did the dance, or do you want people to know that's that guy in my market who knows all
Right.
that stuff about real estate? What's more valuable to you as
Mm.
your real estate brand? Or, if you make cupcakes, or if you help people with lead generation,
Right.
whatever your business is, you really want to make sure your content is relative to your business, because if
Okay.
it's not, then you could get, best case scenario, you'll get a lot of views, but for the wrong reason. And then your content will get recommended to more people who have watched your past videos, not necessarily the demographic you want to get in front of. So
Good
that's
point.
why it's really important. Everyone says niche down, because it's easier to compete. And also you make sure you get in front of the right people. I'd rather have 10 people who are the right people than a million people who are the wrong people.
Right. I've noticed recently they've got trending music where you can add trending music. I believe it's on Instagram to the background of your vocal. And can you explain how that might be beneficial, or maybe it's a bad idea? I haven't done it, but I think the idea behind it is if it's trending music and you have the trending music in the background of, or maybe in the foreground of your video, that might help to expand the reach. Is that am I off base on that, or is it a good idea or bad idea, or just not an idea at all?
Yeah, I'm a little bit indifferent about it. To kind of give you the backstory. So TikTok used to be a platform called Musical.ly.
Oh,
And
I didn't know that.
the entire
Okay.
premise of it was kind of like, that's why there's such a big dance association culture with TikTok, is
Right.
because it was very focused on music. And that was kind of TikTok's big claim to fame, was bring, or Musical.ly was bringing real music, like not just, boilerplate, like free royalty free music, but like
Right.
real music people
Yeah.
love, to help
Snippets.
you make your content. Yeah,
Right.
exactly. When it became TikTok, they carried that through. And then whenever all these platforms were copying TikTok, they all did the same thing.
Okay.
Now, it is, if you're a content creator by trade, which you might be watching this, that stuff is great for trends. It does have an emotional connection. Music's very powerful emotionally for folks. So, it does help you get in front of more people, because it kind of just tells the platform, if I'm doing this thing to this,
Mm.
the Bee Gees Staying Alive, all these other people who are watching this video with the same soundtrack, there's more of a reason that they might like this video as well. So it does help to that degree. But at the end of
Interesting.
the day, I think it is a little bit of a misnomer, just because the folks that you're connecting with for the goal of your business, to get in more to clients, to build your business,
Right.
is really to showcase your brand and get them to know, like, and trust you. You can do that with or without music. So,
Right. So
all
you
that
could
goes to say, yeah, it's
you,
just it can help you get more views, but I don't think it helps really with the more important stuff, which is getting in front of the right people consistently.
gotcha. So you might be appealing to Bee Gees fans who like that song,
Yeah.
but not necessarily what you're trying to sell, sort of thing.
Right. And which
Yeah.
could be good. It's
Yeah.
a little bit of a side thing. It's kind of like
Yeah.
hashtags. It can help, but
Oh,
it's like 2 to 3% of the equation. And you're kind of, sometimes when you focus on that, because we have limited time, we're missing the 80%, which is the content we're talking about and the consistency.
you brought up hashtags. Cool. We're going to be here a long time, man. I hope you've cleared your afternoon, because
I'm good. I
hashtags,
got
there's so many different theories. There's so many different coaches. Some will tell you, oh, you don't need hashtags. Some say you should put maximum 30 or whatever it is. There's all these, these are the hashtags to use for Christmas. These are the hashtags to use for Thanksgiving, whatever. I really don't know. I try to use as many as I can while still staying relevant. But are they a waste of time? You said something like 3 to 4%. Do they have that much influence, really?
I mean, I
I mean,
say three to four.
if you search it, like I always use Mississauga. That's where I'm located. It's a suburb of
Right.
Toronto,
Right.
And so I put hashtag Mississauga because I'm trying to get local people watching.
Yeah.
And I know that does work, I think. I
Yes.
think, but again, it's hard to quantify because how do you know from the data point if you didn't have that hashtag there, where would your video be going? I don't know. But
Yeah, it's really not gonna make or break your strategy. It does make things more searchable. I'm glad you brought that up because it does do that. The thing is though, the vast majority of our experiences on social media is a more passive swiping through the content.
yes, yes,
People do look stuff up. And by the way, younger generations tend to look stuff up for better or for worse on social media. And they use that as a point of getting their information.
mm,
More so than Google in some cases. I think Gen Z sometimes favors looking stuff up on TikTok versus on YouTube or Google,
we're
which is
doomed. We're
which is a
doomed.
little scary. I'm gonna be honest. Somebody who worked at TikTok, I'll tell you that's a little scary. But for better or for worse, so it does help you with searchability for sure.
Okay,
The problem is not so much that hashtags could hurt you; it's that it's another piece that you might feel if you don't do well, then there's no point in doing content, which is very much not
mm,
true. And
good
that's
point.
what the psychological element is more important, honestly, that I see, especially with small businesses who are struggling.
Yep.
The more things that you feel like you need to do are the more things that will feel like hiccups and reasons not to post. And that is where hashtags can be a negative. If you feel like
Interesting.
you're not doing perfect hashtags and therefore you shouldn't, or it just even slows you down from making more content,
Mm,
hashtags will never make or break your strategy. So if you love doing that, then great, it's no problem. If it's gonna slow you down, I don't even worry about it. That's my take from a
okay.
pragmatic standpoint.
Okay. One of my biggest, and I know we're running on the time here. That's okay as long as you don't mind staying a little longer.
Yeah, I'm
Um,
good.
one of the biggest disappointments that any poster, any content creator can have is if you get a lot of views, but hardly any interaction. You might just get one or two people say, "Oh, good video," or one question, or a few likes, but you see other people posting and they've got like 100 comments, and there's
Mhm.
actual conversations going on. That's always been something that bothers me. I always think, well, obviously I'm not posting something. They're watching it, but they're not interacting. So there's something there that's missing that's not connecting with my target audience. What would you say? What's the best way to approach that? Say, okay, I got 1,000 views over the last 2 weeks on this video, and I had one guy say, "Good video." What do you say to someone like that? What are you posting the wrong stuff? Should you be, you know, should you be trying to recraft things a little bit? Should you be asking more questions? People say, well, you should do a survey. Well, there's all sorts of things that you can do to increase that engagement, and that to me is a real tricky thing.
Yeah, it really is. And I think that comments and likes are the new vanity metric. And
Okay.
it's
Yeah.
it's and the reason for that is because you it's not a proper indicator of how well your content does. You can have an amazing piece of content whether people comment on it or don't comment on it. And on the other side, you can have a terrible piece of content that people really dislike, and that can encourage them to post.
I think
Just
I've had
post
that.
just post anything about the US political climate.
Oh,
Honestly, it doesn't matter which way you go. Yeah.
we're not going there. No way.
Yeah, yeah.
But
But
that
there's
or
things,
religion are two things I never talk about.
yeah, that was just I think is wise. Because it
Yeah.
just muddies the waters. But
Yeah.
you can get a lot of comments and have that be a negative representation of your brand.
Mm,
Um,
good
so I
point.
think that's an important note. And a great another analogy to stay on kind of the movie theater trend
Right.
is if you go and see an amazing movie, one of your favorite movies of all time, that doesn't necessarily mean you're going to leave a review or you're going to post on some forum about it. And the
Good
same thing
point.
goes with your content. Sometimes, let's say and as a great exercise here, let's say you have this amazing thing about, let's say you're appealing to sellers and you're saying, hey, here's some really great fixes that you can really improve the equity of your house. And it's
Right.
really easy to do. It's going to give you maybe on average $10,000 worth of equity. Just do some paint, some minor landscaping. The best case scenario, I think, from watching that video, the best next thing the person can do is go use tips and go do those things. That
Mm,
would be the best case scenario because then they're taking your advice, you've
right.
helped them fundamentally, and then they
Right.
get a better result, which is a great place for your brand to be. You've helped somebody tangibly in their life. But if they do that, that means that the next thing they're doing is taking you up on your tip. They're not liking or commenting or
Right.
whatever. So
Exactly.
so comments and stuff like that, a lot of people say that, they're like, hey, I want to get more comments and more engagement. And it can be great. You can get business through comments. So I don't want to say it's a bad thing. It's just that it's not a good indicator. You can have a lot of comments if your content's bad or good. So I say
Interesting.
don't worry about that as much as like something like reach. If you stay on message and you're
Okay.
constantly growing your reach, that's a really good sign.
Okay. Reach is number one. That's that. I've
Yeah.
taken notes on that, and I'm going to be following up on that.
And even just video views, that's a great thing too. They're slightly different.
Right.
Like impression is the amount your content just being seen, but like to
Right.
be a view, it's usually like 3 seconds need to be watched of the video.
Well,
That's a great metric too. Yeah.
I thought it was 30 seconds. Somebody told me if they don't watch 30 seconds on YouTube, anyways, if they don't watch 30 seconds, it doesn't count
Every platform is different. That might be for long. Well, it definitely doesn't.
for
It's
long
definitely
videos.
not that
For
it
long
doesn't
videos.
count. Yeah,
Okay.
it's definitely not that it doesn't count because
Yeah.
generally, in terms of posting, you can only post two different kinds of video on YouTube,
Right.
which is shorts or regular
Right.
content videos. So if your video is 1 minute long, it's not like if somebody watches 29 seconds, YouTube's going to be like,
Okay.
it
Yeah.
doesn't
Valid.
matter.
Yeah.
That's
Valid.
still a 50% watch rate is a great number. So that will still help you, even if it's not 30 seconds. But every
Interesting.
platform does have different rules for that. You're right.
Interesting. Well, listen, Cole, this has been great. And like I say, I'm going to put all your contact information underneath the video and also on the audio only podcast. And you're welcome to come back anytime, man. I feel we just scratched the
Yeah.
surface. There's so much, and especially in a field like real estate, where we're dealing with a lot of visual imagery all the time, whether it's houses or whatever. We didn't even talk about, should an agent be on the video? Should they be walking? Well, here's the kitchen. This guy,
Right.
should they do that or not? There's a million things we can talk about. And I want to get
Yep.
you down on TikTok because that has me mystified. I don't quite understand how it's working. I see it is working. Yeah, I get it. And now I see some big players that have invested in TikTok in a big way. So I'd love to have you back anytime. Anytime you can fit us in, man. And
Yeah.
in the meantime, let's hope some realtors watch this or anybody, like you mentioned, someone selling cupcakes. If you're opening a bakery in the Toronto area and you want to figure out what to do with social media, I think you should call this guy Cole right now. And likewise, in any business, whether you're whatever it is, a pet store, it doesn't matter. If you're in business for yourself, you need to be on social media because people will check you out. I know I do it. When I meet somebody, the first thing I do is I want to see, do they have a website? Do they have social media? Are they anywhere? It doesn't have to be everywhere, but are they on Facebook? Do they have an Instagram account? And how busy is it? If the last time they posted was 3 years ago, maybe that's not the most active business. But we all do that. We all do that because in the world today, we're so bombarded. There's so much information out there. You want to make sure that who you're dealing with is legit. That's the way I see it, anyways. But it's been a real pleasure talking to you. It really has.
Thanks,
And
Randy. I really appreciate it.
no, my pleasure. And again, you're welcome to come back anytime.
Yeah,
So,
would love to.
all right. So, Cole Jarvis, thank you, sir. Thank you for being on board today. And we'll talk again soon. Okay.
Sounds great.
Okay. All right. Take care. Bye.
All right. Bye.